And we have an incredible show for you today. One of our favorite guests, Revolver News founder Darren Beatty, is here with more exclusive reporting on the January 6 stories the rest of the media is ignoring. It's groundbreaking, it's explosive, and downright terrifying. Plus, we're now seeing actual signs of some real accountability for Hunter Biden. But what about for the deep state bad actors destroying our government? Which brings us to major new reports from Revolver News, including new details about the twisted behavior of an unindicted, unidentified man known by the moniker the Fence Cutter Bulwark. This shadowy figure was seen methodically cutting down and then rolling up restricted area fencing around the Capitol lawn in the lead up to the January 6th riot. And we're going to explain it all to you and break it down. And that's not all. Look at your screen. Another shady character appearing to wear an earpiece, caught on video, smashing windows, damaging property, but who has never been arrested. While other January 6 prisoners, like Joe Biggs, received a 17-year prison sentence. And this week, a man named Enrique Tarrique, the former leader of the group called the Proud Boys, received a 22-year sentence in his January 6 case after being found guilty in May of seditious conspiracy. Now, Tarrique wasn't even in Washington on January 6th, but prosecutors say he was the mastermind behind the group's behavior. So, naturally, we have questions. There's all these mysterious characters, like Ray Epps, the fence cutter, whoever planted the pipe bomb, the window breaker, who prosecutors seem, very curiously, not interested in. But why? Others are being sentenced to years, decades, in fact, in jail, some even for nonviolent activities, while these mysterious and nefarious figures still have not been arrested. We have so much to get into on all of this. We'll also discuss the apparent comeback of COVID hysteria, the warning signs for the economy, the state of the 2024 race, and so much more. So make sure, please, if you hit that like button for us, subscribe, share this episode, because you're not going to hear this major breaking news anywhere else. The mainstream media will not cover it. We will give it all to you. And before we get to Darren, a quick word from one of our amazing sponsors who make this show possible. So be sure to go check out the great folks over at Goldco, because gold and silver can protect your retirement savings from inflation and dollar devaluation. I mean, look, we all see the economic warning signs. We see the banks collapsing. We see reckless spending. And I want you to be ready, because I'm ready. And with Goldco, you can take action to secure and stabilize your portfolio. You can roll over your 401k or your IRA into precious metals and safeguard your savings, and you can do it tax and penalty free. So from precious metals, IRAs, to direct purchases of gold and silver, Goldco has helped thousands of Americans place over $2 billion in gold and silver. And when you open up a qualifying gold IRA today, get up to $10,000 in free silver. That's better than playing the Powerball, okay? So go to kimsmetals.com to learn more. That is kimsmetals.com. And joining me now, Revolver News founder Darren Beatty. So Darren, thank you so much for joining us again on the program. You are beyond a favorite, let me tell you something. So just to start, we have all these different shady characters: Ray Epps, the scaffolding and fencing guy, the unknown pipe bomber, this man breaking windows with a possible earpiece, and yet the feds are just letting them off the hook. Lay this all out for us with your reporting step by step, please.
Absolutely. Always great to be here. So thank you. And I think most of the viewers here have probably heard the basics about Ray Epps. And so let's take some time to talk about some other characters who are critical to know about to understand the full scope of what I call the Fedsurrection. You see, the thing with Ray Epps is, as egregious as his behavior was, and how bizarre the fact that he hasn't been charged and he's defended by all of these people is. We know who he is. He's a known quantity. We know his identity. He was, one of the first 20 people that the FBI put on its most wanted list. So at least
Right.
initially, they exhibited some interest in him. This is not the case for two other individuals that I think are just as important as Ray Epps, maybe not just as, but close. And in the case of Scaffold Commander, just as. One of them is called Fence Cutter Bulwark. Now, as one might imagine, this is not the name that his mother gave him because he's not identified. This person is not identified. He's called Fence Cutter Bulwark because he was wearing a special type of jacket called a bulwark jacket, and he can be seen on video methodically, coolly, seemingly professionally, cutting down fencing indicating where the restricted area was very, very, very early on, far before the crowd went from where Trump was speaking over to the Capitol. Now, why is that significant? That's significant because the area designated by the restricted zone and these fencing, that area is normally not restricted. And so by cutting down that fencing early on, he was effectively creating one of the largest legal booby traps in American history.
Entrapment, really.
Indeed, literally, quite literally so, because the crowd, once Trump's speech was done, they went over to the Capitol. Many of these people were unknowingly trespassing because they didn't see the fencing because it had already been cut down by characters
and dismantled. Yeah,
indeed.
Essentially.
So the cutting of fencing was really a critical step in allowing the rally to turn into a riot. And this particular guy, Fence Cutter Bulwark, was one of the key figures, methodically cutting all the fencing very early on. And the other interesting thing about him, this ties into some of the Proud Boys news, is we've seen some pretty draconian sentences as of late for some of the key Proud Boy figures. Fence Cutter Bulwark was pre-positioned at that initial breach site before any of the Proud Boys even got there. And that's important because, in a nutshell, the Revolver thesis as to what happened at that initial breach was that the Proud Boys are effectively the fall guys, in the sense
it's true
that before the Proud Boys arrived at that location, there were a handful of critical players who were pre-positioned there beforehand, who ended up playing really critical roles in creating the conditions for the rally to turn into the riot, who have not been identified, who have not been charged, and in whom the DOJ has exhibited zero interest. And this is especially interesting because Joe Biggs, one of the Proud Boys who just received a pretty insane sentence, I think 17 years. And the remarkable thing is the DOJ was not satisfied with that. They wanted it to be over 20. They were upset that it was below the guidelines that they were calling for, which gives you a sense of the bloodlust animating these corrupt characters in the DOJ. But one of the issues that, according to the government, justify the terrorism enhancement for Biggs was the fact that he was taking down fencing. Now, he did it much later, and so the effect of taking down fencing was far less impactful because the significance of the fencing was if it's removed before the crowd gets there, they don't know it's a restricted zone. But they did a terrorism enhancement on that, which makes it all the more bizarre that one of the key fence cutter guy who was there way before the Proud Boys were there even, he hasn't been identified and they have zero interest in him. So
what does that tell you, though? Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. We're common sense people. We're smart. We're not stupid. So it's unbelievable to me. And you have Joe Biggs, who, by the way, was pleading with the judge. Am I correct? To be able to take his daughter to school or see her, before he has to go away for all these 17 years. And the guy that actually methodically, professionally cut open the fence to create the path, to entrap everyone, to think so they wouldn't knowingly have the intent to trespass. Where's that guy in jail? Where's that guy's case? Where's his trial? Where's his charges?
Right. No, it's very, very curious indeed. And I think the contrast speaks for itself. So we've been talking about fence cutter bulwark, but there is another individual whose behavior, as I mentioned, is just as bad, if not more so, than Ray Epps's. And he's, again, unidentified. And so he's only known by his moniker, Scaffold Commander. And again, he is pre-positioned at that same breach site, again, before the Proud Boys even got there. And in that original and classic Revolver News piece, Meet Ray Epps 2, there's a photo of both in view, fence cutter bulwark and scaffold commander sitting on the same ledge, waiting for things to go down, pre-positioned, waiting for, waiting to go before the Proud Boys.
Yeah. Picture, as we say, is worth 1,000 words. Yeah.
Yeah. What are the chances that two individuals who played key roles, both of whom unidentified, both of whom unindicted, both of whom the government has zero interest in, and they're pre-positioned at the same place before the Proud Boys get there? Like, that's pretty amazing. And like fence cutter, the scaffold commander, as he's called, took part in a little bit of fence cutting, but he also immediately rushed in and perched himself atop the scaffold that was erected in anticipation of Joe Biden's inauguration speech. So he's up there on the scaffolding with a bullhorn telling the crowd, who, remember, arrives there and they're trespassing because there's no fencing. Mm-hmm. So you have the crowd there who's technically trespassing, although they don't know it in most cases. And now they're hearing a booming voice from on high, authoritatively proclaiming, "Move forward, move forward. We need your help. We need your help. Move forward." And as a matter of crowd psychology, and get medical assistance. Who knows? Who knows? They just move forward, and when people in front of you move forward, the people behind you move forward, and the crowd moves forward.
It's common sense.
And he's just getting people to move forward. So that's the other element of the booby trap, getting people as close to the Capitol building as possible. And then, of course, when the windows were broken in and people were going in, the move forward command changed into fill up the Capitol, fill up the Capitol. So he was one of the chief instigators there. Not only was he a chief instigator, telling people to move forward, telling people to go into the Capitol, he also was cutting fencing, and he also, like fence cutter bulwark, just happened to be pre-positioned at that initial breach point before the Proud Boys even got there. So these two guys, unlike Ray Epps, they haven't been identified, and I'm firmly convinced that if either is identified, it will be the biggest scandal in the country, and it will definitively...
How do we do it? How do you do it? Because Revolver News can do it. How do you get that information to identify these people? Hasn't anyone recognized them from the photographs and showing them that they're like essentially, complicit together, co-conspirators?
Remarkably not. And I've expended considerable resources because I understand that these are very high leverage plays, in any endeavor in life, you want to, spend your resources and time doing something that has a tremendous amount of upside. And as far as the Fedsurrection issue goes generally, I don't think there's anything, maybe there's some things related to the pipe bomb, but there are few things higher leverage than identifying the fence cutter or identifying the scaffold commander. I've used facial recognition on both to no success.
Wow.
It's very hard. It's very possible that...
Seems like ghosts, honey, a little bit. I don't know. What do you think's going on here?
Possible scaffold commander was wearing some kind of deceptive prosthetic to...
See? That's what it is. They're disguising their face. That's why facial recognition is not working.
It's possible. And also, it's just facial recognition, as good as it is, it requires, different angles. It usually helps to have a full face. And people see the pictures of Scaffold Commander, you see that he's wearing ear covers, he has head cover. You don't see the whole face. And that's the case as well with fence cutter bulwark. So I would imagine the government has more sophisticated tools. I would imagine if the government wanted to know, they would know who these people are, and they probably do, and there's a
I
reason
imagine
they haven't
that the
pursued them.
government put them in and they're concealing their identity and using countermeasures like the, headpieces, earpieces, everything like that to disguise, who they are, obstruct it so that you can't actually use these facial recognition techniques for the 3D angle because they have it compromised.
Yeah, I think that's very possible, but it's still kind of ridiculous given how high leverage this is. And given that we're in an age of ubiquitous mass surveillance, that somebody somewhere hasn't been able to identify
Yeah,
these
I
people.
mean,
It's simply,
I don't
it's
believe in the
yeah,
coincidence, Darren.
it's hard to. It's hard to accept any innocent explanation for the case of these two individuals, or for that matter, the whole issue with Ray Epps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the problem. And what have we heard now about Ray Epps and what's going on? Because, this to me is baffling. How is this guy just running around? I don't know, suing people who talk about him, whatever, but like it's so obvious. Like no one has a good or decent explanation to say, oh, okay, we're checking him out or we're doing this or we're doing that. Like, how is it if you're hell bent on holding people accountable and throwing all these people in jail for multiple decades? How is it you're not looking at this guy? How?
Well, that's another great question. And again, people know the story. I think people mostly know the story about Epps. The video is there. It kind of speaks for itself. He's documented as having texted his nephew saying, I orchestrated it. I mean, the totality of evidence in does not lend itself to an innocent explanation as to his participation January 6th. It doesn't seem like he could have been an authentic actor on that day, and that he was directly or indirectly acting on behalf of some other entity or organization.
Very
In my
interesting.
yeah.
So, we see like, and I'll touch back on this, some of these egregious, sentences, like Joe Biggs, sentenced 17 years in prison. And even the judge in Donald Trump's DC case essentially said BLM riots are okay, but January 6 rioters deserve harsh punishments. Put all of this into a larger context as to where we are right now as a country.
Well, it's a great question. And, the entire system is operationalized now to suppress and silence and really crush the energies associated with Donald Trump's victory in 2016. They want to put that back in the bag, and they'll go to any length necessary in order to do that, including this last and most disturbing phase of their assault on the American people and the American way of life, which is the weaponization of the legal departments, of the Justice Department, of the legal system. And that's what you see, I think, in its most egregious form in these cases against the Proud Boys, because it's pretty clear they, in particular, wanted to make an example of the Proud Boys because they've been characterized as this paramilitary wing of Trumpism, which is ridiculous, but that's how they're presented. And I think there was an especial interest in making an example of the Proud Boys, hence these insane sentences, including 22 years, I think, for Enrique Tarrio, who wasn't even there on January 6th, which is astonishing.
It really is astonishing. It shocks the conscience. I can only hope and pray Donald Trump getting back in will rectify these egregious wrongs, this injustice, and this persecution of innocent people who were entrapped. It's so un-American and frightening. I hope people are terrified about this because they should be. But meanwhile, Donald Trump is polling better than ever. Including in a general election matchup with Joe Biden. He can win at the ballot box, right? Okay, Darren. But the data shows that he's also being attacked by the courts, as you well know. This is what they're doing. This is what they're doing to the January 6ers, etc. So if you were going to give the Trump 2024 campaign messaging, advice, like on a slogan, on anything about how they should run things, what would it be, given what's going on in the climate right now of lawfare and persecution, injustice, all of the above, to sort of take the message home to the American people?
Well, I've always thought that these embattled conditions are really where Trump's instincts
Mm-hmm.
best thrive. Like this is sort of there are a lot of things that make him an exceptional leader, but maybe the most exceptional thing is an intuitive understanding of what to do under tremendous pressure and conditions that would kind of collapse most people or push people into making the wrong strategic choice. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, you can even in seemingly small examples, which don't seem so small now, in the mugshot itself, they put him in a position where he needs to have a mugshot,
Right.
and he comes out with what is arguably the most iconic mugshot in American history.
Yeah.
And,
Unbelievable.
and just the you study the face there, and it's really is something. It's like you only have one shot at that, and you can have any weird micro expression. But he pulled it off, and it's one of those things. Like, think of how much any ordinary person would have thought about that. Think about DeSantis. He would have had Frank Luntz staying up 48
Oh
hours
my God, you're
straight,
so right. Wind
full
checking, pull
testing.
checking. Yeah.
Like, should he smile, full smile? Should he half smile? Should he do this? Should he do that? They would have done all the things. And you know what? DeSantis is such a sucker that he would probably end up smiling for it, would be the bad choice. And Trump, he just knew it. He just knew you had to make that face, and
Mean
it
mugging,
worked.
mean mugging.
It
Yeah, he
worked.
nailed it. He nailed it. It was like he won
Yeah.
the gold medal in the Olympics for a mugshot. So, but that's
And it
how he
seems
is. He
like,
knows
but
how
it
to read
seems
it.
like, no, but see, the thing is, people can say, oh, this is trivial detail, but it's
No,
not a trivial detail because it speaks to his intuitive understanding of how to capitalize on extremely high pressure, make or break moments. Think
you're right.
about think about the debates in 2016, all of the pressure that was inherent in that one, like, question, and he deflected and diffused it and won over the entire audience with the Rosie O'Donnell remark. These are the kinds of things they can't be taught. These are the kinds of areas where he can really shine and distinguish himself. And he understands that the whole fact that he's indicted 4, 5, 6, however many, he understands that he can use that to his advantage. To be indicted by a corrupt system is a badge
Badge of
of
honor.
honor. And
Yes,
he can turn it around, and he knows this intuitively. Turn this
so
around and
true.
say, what are you going to do, Ron or whoever? I mean, they're not
Right.
even in the game, so why even talk to them? But if let's say that we're in a fictional universe where Ron jumps up 30 more percent in the polls, so he's actually a legitimate factor in the conversation, and Trump's going to say, what are you going to do, Ron, that will earn you your indictments?
Right.
What are you going to do, whomever else? What are you going to
You're
do,
right.
Mike
Because
Pence,
none of
that's
them
going to
are a
earn your
threat.
indictment?
Right. None of them
Exactly.
are a threat. And then Pence went up there and tried to take credit for everything, obviously, that Trump did. And he said, Trump Pence, well, why would we take him when we can have the original? Why?
Right.
Like, take the master chef, no offense, but not the sous chef. Like, what the hell? So, like, how about this now? So, another big story, and I wanted to talk to you about this, that I think in a way, relates to all of this, is Elon Musk threatening to sue the Anti-Defamation League for accusing him of anti-Semitism and fueling an advertiser exodus. This is a whole big story. Um, who are the ADL, and what's the larger context here, if you can lay it out for the viewers?
Great question and extremely important issue. We talk about January 6th all the time, but Revolver, I'm proud to say, was really at the forefront of a lot of major developments in our politics, including the Elon acquisition of Twitter, which we called very early on and analyzed from the very beginning for the strategic problems that he could anticipate, fully understanding the architecture of censorship. And now, whether he did originally or not, Elon is coming face to face with some critical components of that architecture of censorship. In fact, I would go so far as to say that you cannot tell the story about how the internet was taken away from us without telling the story of the ADL.
Mm.
There is an analog, I would say, one of the most astute political strategic decisions made recently was George Soros's decision to weaponize his capital by buying off DAs around the country, by investing in their races and so forth. The analog to that in the censorship regime was the ADL's approach to go to the various trust and safety departments at the respective social media companies. These are the departments responsible really for censorship. They call it trust and safety, naturally enough. And the ADL approached them one by one and said, I think you ought to consider revising your terms of service. Mm-hmm. And they have various leverage points and means to do that. And they got them all to change their terms of service to better accommodate the ADL's conception of what speech should be allowed and what speech shouldn't. So this happened, very early on, way before Elon. This began even before Trump, really, but really accelerated after Trump. And one of the tactics that they can use, and this speaks to sort of a tension between the business model that Elon is considering, his proposed objective to enhance free speech, because he's big on this advertising thing. He's really celebrating the fact that quote unquote creators can now get paid for tweeting and so forth. And that's great. But the more dependent the platform is on ads, the more they create ad space as a vector of attack that organizations like the ADL can use. It's just like we have this term that we've all heard, a scam term, a pretext for censorship, disinformation. There's a more specialized and equally ridiculous term that's a pretext for censorship in a more specified way, and that's brand safety.
Yep. Okay.
You get a mafia tactic where organizations like the ADL, when people advertise with those they don't like, they go to the companies and they say, you know what? Advertising at this place, it has a lot of hate speech. That's going to be really bad for your brand. I mean, you might want to reconsider. But when they say that's going to be really bad for their brand, what it means is they're going to mobilize a whole bunch of people to write hit pieces on them for advertising there. It's the standard classic mafia shakedown technique of, it would be a shame if your restaurant burned down, effectively. But in this case, the restaurant burning down is you have 100 hit pieces written about you that you're aligned with, racism or whatever, anti-Semitism. And so this is what the ADL has been trying to do. This is how they threaten. They absolutely need control, and Elon has undermined their control of Twitter. And it looks like we're shaping up for a real battle between Elon and the ADL. I think the ADL is weakened. There's a trending tag on Twitter that says ban the ADL. Previously, this would have been inconceivable. Nobody would really publicly challenge the ADL in the way they're doing now.
Yeah.
So I think they're much weaker, and I hope that Elon takes them on with all the resources that he has, but at least shows enough backbone to get them to back off in their latest assault against his company.
It's really true. It's going to be a pivotal battle, and I really do hope that he puts his muscle and his money behind it, because I think it's a defining moment, and it's going to tell us a lot about who he is and what he prioritizes, depending on what he decides to fund and pursue, and how willing he is to take it all the way.
Indeed. No, I totally agree. And as for the ADL, it's an amazing organization. You have to look into their history. I mean, it's amazing that they're able to exist and thrive to a certain extent. It's a very dirty history. There was a situation in the 90s where they had a spy ring that was, spy on journalists, and they were connected with police departments, and they have a lot of leverage over police departments, over law enforcement, over a lot of government institutions, or at least they had historically. And I think the only silver lining here is that the current leadership of the ADL, specifically an individual called Jonathan Greenblatt, who is an ineffective operative in the sense that he's made the ADL partisan, and therefore he's made it such that it's acceptable to criticize the ADL in partisan terms. His history is that he was an Obama White House guy. He was a merchant of water bottles. He sold water bottles. He had the kind of scam going on where he would sell you an overpriced water bottle and then say, "Oh, I'm going to donate some of this to Africa." but he ended up actually exacerbating the California drought because he was taking water from California and shipping it elsewhere. So he was an ineffective water bottle salesman, and he really takes the water bottle mindset to his leadership of the ADL. And I think, the people, in theory, their mission is good. You want to combat genuine anti-Semitism, but they need somebody who's more effective, more legitimate, more respected than a glorified Obama hack water bottle salesman who is really making a disgrace of his organization, of its professed mission, and also of the liberties which the American people cherish, among them free speech and free exercise.
Speaking of free speech, free exercise, and not complying, meanwhile, we're seeing signs, and this is very disturbing to me because, of course, just in time, right? No coincidence. Seeing signs of the COVID policy, the hysteria, reemerging inside the Biden White House. And Biden was recently seen back with the mask. And then, of course, his wife got the COVID again, even though she's like 17x, like triple boosted, whatever. So it's ridiculous. He's seen back with the mask. We see the theatrical tweets about Jill Biden testing positive. How much of this is just your typical far left lunacy, and how much of it is actually a political calculation?
It's a great question. It might be premature to say. I think, I hope that most of the American people have been sort of cognitively inoculated to a lot of the really, criminally stupid and evil policy mistakes in the first sort of COVID era. I was encouraged and also kind of baffled to see that CNN, of all places, took Fauci to task for his position, for his position on masks. So it was shocking to see CNN criticize Fauci, but it was even more shocking to see the chutzpah of Fauci, who has not changed his position in the least.
At all. At all. Steadfast.
Yeah. His answer was effective. It was just a bull answer of, an exercise in bureaucratic obfuscation that conceded the point that the host was making without acknowledging error or mistake, or giving any indication that he's learned from this massive failure, which is even more remarkable. So for the COVID issue, we'll have to wait and see, but I like to think that the American people are a little bit less gullible, a little less compliant, far less tolerant of this insane, lockdown policy that we saw, the masks.
I think people have had enough of it. And, their little puppet Biden putting the stupid mask on and whatever, and they're just a joke. The hypocrisy and wanting to take complete control, they just like, okay, this is it. It's just autonomous. We're going to do whatever we want. You are going to be our puppet master slaves. You're going to do whatever we say for you to do. You're not going to be able to think on your own. We're going to mask you. We're going to block you. We're going to control you. We're going to tell you what to think, what to do, how to act. We're going to take all your money. And that's it. I mean, that's their ultimate goal.
Right. No, it's total control. And, given how the COVID, the first COVID played out, hopefully there's not another one, but, it's amazing to see how compliant people were. And, the cynical take on it would be, people really attach tremendous importance to things like, the Second Amendment this, Second Amendment that. But you know, if the Second Amendment doesn't protect against something like what the government did during COVID, then is it, really that much of a protection? If the government can do
You're
that,
so right. That's the
there's
problem.
really no limits on what they can do. And so people can, clean the, rifles in their basement and talk about, Second Amendment, but it's really just kind of an opiate at this point, against, what the government is able to do, which is unfortunate. The better inoculation, I think, is the awareness and the resistance, and we've seen it once. So hopefully, if they try to do it again, people simply won't comply.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, I feel like there's more pushback on it because we've seen this playbook. But, there's just also, I really feel this growing feeling of not just, managed decline, but just an outright, implosion. That we are just in lockstep, right, for this combustible, bureaucratic, mind control, life control, and compliance.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're a compliant population. And the sad thing is that, at least with respect to other areas, the Anglosphere, America is probably the best. We were compliant cattle, but we were nowhere near as bad as, what the UK or, Australia. Australia is really the worst. I mean, when you
Yeah,
see
they
how,
put their leaders in like isolation in rooms, and like one of them was
like,
the prime minister asked for like a treadmill or something to where they lock everybody up there. It's insanity.
right. So at least, searching for the silver lining, we're way more compliant than we should be, but we're less compliant than our counterparts elsewhere in the Anglosphere.
Well, so I just feel though that we're not gonna. I hope people are not gonna take it this time around. Like you can't do the same thing after you saw what they did and how they lied about it. Fauci has not, ceded any ground in terms of any omission or understanding or acknowledgement about what he did that was wrong. Not to mention all his conflict of interest. But and also people are pissed off. They're frustrated because where's the accountability for this? For the damage to children who couldn't go to school, the lack of socialization, children with learning differences, all the above, the economic dollars lost, people's businesses destroyed, families torn apart, disruption in the familiar unit because of all this. It's just like, okay, we just keep going forward, and then they're trying to do it again. And really, the symbol of that is Joe Biden with the mask on again. I mean, it's just ridiculous. He hid in his basement last time. He doesn't want to campaign. He doesn't have the ability, the stamina, the strength, the mental acuity, the cognition, any of the above, the motor skills to be able to serve as, commander in chief. And he's just like, like a little like sock puppet running around, and so they can get him potentially to the end of his presidency and then pop someone else in, whether it's Newsom or whether it's Michelle Obama or whatever. They don't want it to be Kamala. That's why they're not going to take out Joe Biden right now. They're not going to say step down right now because they don't want her.
Right. No, I think that is an accurate assessment. They don't want Kamala, and they understand that Biden is really not a viable option
Yeah.
into, at least if we're talking about another term, maybe through the election, but that's a big if. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. They probably would like him to win and then step away rather than, somebody else
Well,
running.
then they'd
But
have to put someone in that they're going to find palatable as a vice
right,
president. So that
right,
means they have to remove her, give her perhaps
which is hard
a
because that's,
State Department. Yeah, she's a black
right,
female who also
right,
claims to be Asian American and a lot of other
right,
things. Right? Right.
right.
Let me ask you about this one other thing too. I'm curious about it because just this week, United issued this nationwide, ground stop for all their flights, and it wasn't even that big of a story. I mean, what's going on there?
Well, it seems like the whole airline industry is going to hell, and we've known for a long time that the airport experience is absolutely atrocious. I think
Horrific.
arguably nothing better recapitulates what a shithole America has become better than being in an airport and having to fly from one place to another domestically. It is inexcusably bad.
Terrible.
It's horrible. Everything from the smell to the people to the fast food. In fact, one of the most popular pieces, one of the most popular pieces we had at Revolver News was addressing this very issue of how horrible the airports are and how all of the annoying and really intolerable aspects of the airport sort of recapitulate the broader issues and problems in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one problem. But then there's the comfort issue, but then there's also the safety issue, the maintenance issue, and you know things you don't realize what it takes to maintain something until stuff starts breaking down.
Oh,
And
it's so true.
we're at that breaking down point where just forget about innovating and making improvements, forget about even daring to dream of having an airport as nice as Singapore's or Dubai or a number of other places in the world that just absolutely put us to shame. Forget about that. Just the maintenance issue itself is something, and it's not just in the airports. We're going to start to have more and more conversations and a more I think attentive consciousness to the preconditions of maintaining complex systems like infrastructure and other things, because these things don't necessarily require the highest IQs. You don't need rocket scientists, but you need a lot of people who meet a basic threshold of intelligence,
And core
competence,
competency. Yeah.
and core competence and work ethic, and you need them to be consistent.
God, where
And
are all those people, please?
exactly, and that's precisely what's breaking down, and you're
Yeah,
seeing more
trust
and
me.
more.
I've had like post traumatic stress disorder from my last experience running through the airport, like barefoot, no ID, no phone, no nothing to get to the gate while Don and I was stuck. He had a backpack, I had a purse. He was there. We ran to Spirit Airlines to try to make this red eye flight. I mean, there are no words,
And
honestly.
more and more people, I don't know if you've heard this, but more and more people that I've talked to who are sort of a lot of people behind the curve. I've been sort of on this idea that America's lagging behind for a long time with respect to standard of living and other things. Southeast Asia, areas of the Middle East are really surpassing us in an embarrassing fashion in terms of infrastructure and so forth. But even now, people who are my parents' friends and people who are, baby boomers and stuff, they're even saying they'll go on a trip to somewhere, maybe not even Dubai, maybe they'll go to Portugal, maybe they'll go to some place that isn't even like ultra cutting edge, and
Mm.
they'll see what things are like, and they say, wow, things actually work better here, and we're not worried about
Everybody's telling me
crime
that.
all the time. We can walk around
And how
safely.
clean the streets
the
are and that
food
it's
the
safe
food
and
is
it's
a lot
nice.
better. The food is a lot better and fresher and cheaper. And there's this sense that, which is incredible for people who've, lived in America, love American patriots, but you fly back into America and you're back at,
I mean, honestly, it's why I don't even want to like fly. I'm about like straight up to become like agoraphobic. I don't want to even get out of here because I don't want to go. It's such a mess. And the new standards they have at TSA where the little bucket, boxes, and you're sitting there forever. TSA went home at 7, Clear went home at 7. You're standing there. You're like, what is going on? You're waiting and waiting for these little boom, boom, boom bucket boxes to go through. And it was just like, wow, we have gone from bad to worse in like short order. But anyway, don't even get me started. We'll
It's
have to have you
really
back for a
true. And
whole like show on
just
that.
to add, as long as we're in a little venting session here, I will
Vent.
say
Yeah.
that the TSA is one thing to be extremely incompetent and stupid, but when you combine that with this bitter attitude, this horrible attitude, it really makes for the
Terrible.
worst collective experience you can imagine. And it just encompasses everything from, again, it's all packed in. Everything we see in the country more broadly is packed into the airport experience, to the the inconveniences of living in the surveillance police state with none of the advantages. That's really where we are in America. It's the worst of both worlds. If you're going to live in a police state, at least have it be clean, at least have it be functional, at least have it be safe. But we're in the police state and things are dirty. Things are not functional and things are not safe.
And things
The
don't
worst
taste
of
good
both
either.
worlds.
Okay.
Exactly.
They
Exactly.
don't. That's the thing. All right. So you're a political theorist. You know, I like saying that because it fits you very well. Can you provide some context to this rise of the so-called managerial class and what some call a fake economy? Because there seems to be stark cultural shifts in the way many Americans view work, and it comes at the expense of the ability to even maintain some kind of like positive and cohesive infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a great question, and really, it would take a lot of time and a lot of thought to really do it justice. But I think, as far as the productive economy goes, a lot of people, I think, operate under the illusion that there's this kind of pure economy where
Mm-hmm.
people get jobs and they're paid for their productive work. I don't think that might be an ideal. There's some places are closer to that than others, but that has never been fully the reality. And especially now where we live in this system that is not a free economy. It's more of
Mm-hmm.
this merger between the legal apparatus and all of the kind of civil rights laws they have, and how those laws are integrated into how the commercial economy works in the United States. And there's a whole ecosystem that developed out of businesses needing to comply with the various civil rights laws, but ultimately that emerged into this symbiotic thing where they're merged together now, and the incentives are both perverse and aligned. And so really a lot of things in the economy are not quite what they seem. A lot of things are not, oh, there's this job because that's what they need. It's there's this job because that plays a certain role in the stability of the system. The only unfortunate thing is the system sucks and doesn't deliver for the American people. It delivers for the client states, the client class that's, beneficiary of whatever kind of um, arrangement we're talking about. And so, this goes to sort of a lot of the HR industries in the university system. The
Mm-hmm.
version of it is that you have, more people who are part of the university bureaucracy than actual professors. And the top bureaucrats are making more money than the professors.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bunch of, how many, diversity bureaucrats do you have per professor of classics or anything
Sure.
that we might deem to be more important?
Right.
That's the university version, but there's a corporate version, there's a finance version. And as I said, there's an integration of the commercial economy to the legal structure, because there's not only laws but benefits and incentives in place to kind of accommodate the we could call it the woke structure or whatever. It's,
Mm-hmm.
if there's certain business advantages to having, women or minorities on the board of your company, then people play games with that in order to optimize. And there's a whole kind of industry that's developed into making these
Sure.
optimizations. Then you create people whose job it is to optimize based on those things. So you're building layer and layer. You're basically building a whole economy on top of making the kind of woke system, making the ideology work, helping the ideology to integrate um, into the economy itself. And it becomes this situation where it's too big to fail. And people
Mm.
say, well, how do you get rid of the woke stuff? Well, people don't realize how deeply ingrained this is into the
Sure.
very bone marrow of our sort of our political economy. So that's one issue. And the other issue is, it says, a lot of time, the jobs aren't there for the reasons people think.
Sure.
The DC Metro transportation industry, is a great example. Totally incompetent, totally corrupt. People are making six figures and absolutely doing a horrible job. But the idea is people have those. It's a patronage system for a certain type of political quid pro quo stability. That's the reason those jobs are there. Those jobs aren't there so people can do the best job at what they're technically supposed to be doing. And this has a variety, I think, of interesting implications for other important conversations and debates. For instance, the debate about artificial intelligence. There's a lot of people who think that automation or AI or some version of both will lead to an explosion of unemployment. But again, that presupposes that the employment is based on productivity rather than
Right.
other factors. And I think if you actually look at the mechanisms in place for how most jobs work, they're not really based on productivity. And so I would think for that reason that AI and automation per se are actually far less threatening to the employment than a lot of people would initially think.
Yeah, absolutely. Just real quick, because we're running out of time here, but I just want to get, as we wrap up, say it's January 2025, Donald Trump's back in the White House, he's been inaugurated. Give me a couple quick things, lay out what should be his first move.
Well, he's got to clean house at the DOJ.
Yep.
He's got to pardon a lot of people who need to be pardoned, and he needs to seriously begin the process of uprooting the filth that is
And the deep
entrenched
state, yeah.
itself in
And the
every single
uniparty.
institution in the United States.
Everything that has like a CIA, IRS, DOJ, FBI. Yes, exactly. That's what I think. Well, okay, so real quick, Darren, where can everybody go so they can subscribe so we can keep this great investigative reporting, everything going with what you have created with Revolver News, which is truly extraordinary?
Thank you very much. Yes, revolver.news, revolver.news as always. Read it, share it, tell people about it, read our exclusives. And if you can, support us because, there are a lot of worthy causes, but I'd say you'd be hard pressed to find something that gives the value per dollar that you see with this very effective little vehicle we have at revolver.news. It's fearless and cutting edge stuff, and it's delivering. So if you want to be part of that movement, you want to be part of something that actually isn't a disappointing joke.
Right.
And there are a few things like that. And you have some spare change, go to Revolver News and support us. But most importantly, just read and share, because our primary objective is spreading the word and spreading the truth no matter what.
It's really true versus this spoon-fed filth that other people put out and people swallow and accept as truth. So God bless you for what you do. Always a great friend to this program and to Don Jr.'s. Darren Beatty is founder of Revolver News. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Kimberly.
All right. And my closing remarks just ahead, but I also want to thank another brave sponsor for supporting this show. So don't forget about Patriot Mobile, because with Patriot Mobile, you put America first with every call, all while getting the same nationwide coverage as major carriers. Patriot Mobile provides you dependable wireless service at an affordable price, putting your dollars into action and supporting freedom-loving values. They donate, and this is really important, a portion of every dollar to support groups that fight for the First Amendment, the right to bear arms, the sanctity of life, and protecting our brave police and first responders. Patriot Mobile, it's mobilizing freedom while supporting you. For free activation, please go to patriotmobile.com/KG, patriotmobile.com/KG. And I also want to bring you a message from Patriot Lifestyle, where you can save more and spend less on a whole host of different benefits, from non-insurance healthcare benefits to savings on travel. To learn more, because these programs all come at an extraordinary value and they will greatly improve your life. And in closing, the MAGA momentum is building. The Fulton County mugshot was designed to embarrass Donald Trump, but it's already backfiring. I lay it all out in my new column in the Washington Times. And it's more than ever, this election feels like Donald Trump's Act 3, the art of the comeback. Unlike Joe Biden and so many other products of the Washington swamp, Donald Trump puts his love of country and his mission to restore American greatness above his personal security, stability, frankly, his safety. And remember, there are no Trump policies without Donald Trump himself. And with Donald Trump back in office, life gets better one day for all the hard-working Americans all across this great country. And until that day, and for every day in between, remember that you have a home right here on this show on Rumble, where we reject the false narrative and always seek the truth. So be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, please, at Kimberly Guilfoyle, Don Jr.'s channel, turn on notifications, download the Rumble app, and please tell all your friends and family so they know exactly where to find us. And also be sure to follow me across all platforms, please, X, formerly known as Twitter, Truth Social, Facebook, and Instagram. And please don't miss Don Jr.'s big show at 6 p.m. He's fired up and will be talking to you and taking all your questions live. I hope you have a great rest of the day.